Welcome to HarmonyTALK, a podcast about dreamers and doers. We chat with people who have successfully pursued a dream. They come from every walk of life, science, industry, the arts, and global innovation. This podcast is brought to you by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm your host, Lisa Champeau. Today's guest is actually someone who is in the process of fulfilling her dream and who is determined to change the world. Dana Zhaxylykova is a young chemist from Kazakhstan who wants to rid the planet of microplastics, which are harmful to man, animal, and the environment. A very hot topic right now. Dana has actually been called a microplastics warrior extraordinaire. She is a research student currently studying for her master's degree in Spain and France, who has a bachelor's in civil and environmental engineering. She is co-author of an article in the Marine Pollution Journal, part of the peer-reviewed journal Science Direct, on microplastic contamination in a wastewater treatment plant in her home country of Kazakhstan. Dana has a very engaging Instagram account where she delivers tips on how all of us can contribute to sustainability and ending microplastic pollution, tips on beauty products, fashion, food, and ways to live. To date, Dana has close to 50,000 followers. Welcome, Dana.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, you did.
You told your parents when you were very young that you wanted to change the world. And today you have a job that you say, quote, perfectly reflects all your passions, environment, science, and the possibility to change the world. You became an environmental engineer and a chemist, but how did you come upon microplastics as your cause?
I think the first reason I never thought about microplastics before, we never really had this topic during our studies in environmental engineering. It just was the idea that my professor came up because he saw a bunch of papers coming up with how it's everywhere and how it's understudied. And we realized that no one did that research before in Kazakhstan. And to be honest, in the whole Central Asia, no one ever did the research on microplastics. So we decided to become first. And as I dived into this topic, I realized how relatively new it is for us, but at the same time, it's widely spread. It's everywhere. It's affecting everyone. I don't think there is any single creature that is not affected by microplastics or nanoplastics. And we decided, that's a very important topic, a very understudied one. So we just started it. It was 3 years ago in Kazakhstan. For us, it was huge. We were able to publish our paper. That's how the journey started.
Let's just backtrack for a second. Microplastics, let's just explain what they are to our audience. 5 millimeters, less than 5 millimeters, right, in diameter?
Yeah. Basically, it's just plastic, the plastic itself, but it just refers to the size of it, which is less than 5 millimeters. And there are actually two types of microplastics, primary and secondary ones. Primary microplastics are the ones that are manufactured with the size of being less than 5 millimeters. But the secondary ones are the ones that broke down from larger plastic objects as it broke down and became microplastics.
Tell us why they're so threatening. It's a big subject, I know.
Yeah. I think it's the fact that it's everywhere right now. And last year, this recent year, we only started to see how it's inside of our bodies. We found it in the blood samples of humans, in all of the organs, almost all of the organs, in brains, in lungs, and everywhere. Even the most shocking one for me, always, it's the placenta. So babies are exposed to microplastics even before being born.
How do the microplastics get there? Do we eat them somehow?
They're very small, so they can go through everything. They can go through, you ingest these microplastics, so they are spread. You actually inhale it because also they were found in the samples of clouds and samples of air. They are very lightweight, so they can go attached to the dust, for example. And when you inhale it, you also get it inside. And, we have a lot of plastic around us, like our clothes, our bed sheets, water bottles. Everything is right now is covered with plastic and microplastic. Of course, they release microplastic. And of course, it affects us and gets inside of our bodies.
You have a lot of tips on your Instagram account. I mean, how do you know that the cosmetics in your cabinet have microplastics in them?
I just recently learned about it, to be honest, that microplastics actually intentionally put into different cosmetics products as a chip filler or to get a right consistency for the products. And the way you can see if it has or doesn't have microplastic is just by reading the ingredient list. Usually the microplastics there are polyethylene or other ingredients that have poly. Usually they are microplastics. And there are some different apps that you can use to see if the ingredient list have microplastic content. The one is Beat the Microbeat app. And with that, you can just scan the ingredient list and to see which ones are the microplastics. It's actually very hard to find any products without them because like 80-90% of all the products, they use microplastic. They're not regulated. They're not banned.
Well, you do a lot of lobbying, obviously, on your Instagram account and in other places at many different levels, exhorting or asking individuals to change their habits, also companies and governments. And of course, microplastics, as you just mentioned, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So I know in your article on the wastewater treatment plant, and correct me if I'm wrong, that plant did have a process for getting rid of microplastics, but not enough. And so, the effluent was just still full of microplastics going into, I guess, the ocean or the Caspian Sea. So how do you tackle this?
The thing is, I'm just going back to wastewater treatment plant. They had 90% of removal rate, of removal efficiency. And you would think like, it's a lot, 90%, it's a lot. But still, there are so many microplastics in the influent itself. So 90%, even 10% is still a big amount of microplastic. 10%, in our case, in the wastewater treatment plant in Astana, it was still releasing, I think, hundreds of millions microplastic particles per day, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just 10%. And 10%, it's already a couple of 100 millions microplastic particles per day. And it's just per day. And it's going directly into the river and entering our waterways. And currently, as I said, there are no regulation on wastewater treatment plant anywhere in this world. Not in Kazakhstan, not in US, not in Europe. It's not regulated. There are some regulations that are going to be prepared in Europe, but it's just in the future. So currently, if you discharge like a couple of microplastics per day, or you discharge like billions of microplastics, it's not going to be regulated. You're not going to be fined, or you're not going to even track it. So you are allowed to discharge as many microplastics as you want. So it's a very huge topic. It's a very difficult one. I don't have the right answer for that. What I want to do in my future is to try and do some regulations for that, at least in some countries. So there would be at least some regulations on how many microplastics are allowed to be discharged every day. So it's not harming the planet and the people and the animals, of course.
So your plan eventually is to maybe go back to Kazakhstan and sort of lobby for those kinds of changes at the government level?
Maybe starting with Europe, because in Kazakhstan, they're still a bit slow about environmental regulations.
We're going to talk about Kazakhstan in a minute because it is not a country we hear a whole lot about. But what has been the response to your Instagram posts and your cause in general?
I would say that mostly people are shocked with the information I share. You don't have a lot of information like this, like actual scientific microplastic researcher that is posting on Instagram. I think it's quite rare. And when people see this information, this data, these statistics, they usually get very shocked. And I think that's like the first response of people, because when I learned about it, I was also very shocked and amazed at how unregulated and not talked enough this topic is. But the second one, I think, is the motivation that they have. They start to get motivated to little by little do some changes. And also I post a lot about like sustainability tips and how easily can you become more sustainable or more mindful about your consumption, about the things around you and the things you use. And I think, people get motivated by that and they start to get more and more sustainable, which is really cool. And I think I have a very great community on Instagram because they are very supportive. And whenever they learn something, they're like, wow, it's so interesting and it's so cool. I really want to try to do that at my home or to educate my friends or family about this. And I think it's very great.
Well, one of the tips that you posted recently was when you're dating, go on an environmental date. Go to the beach and pick up the plastics on the beach.
Yeah, that's what we did with my husband.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, I think your positive energy really shows through. This is an amazing topic, but it's also, again, it's very challenging, very, very challenging. What kinds of questions do people ask you in terms of their cosmetics or their clothes? Do they say to you, how do I figure out that my clothes, I should change what I'm wearing? Or how do I find ones that are not made with microplastics? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about that. What kind of brands should I go to, or where should I buy my clothes now? Or what should I do with the plastic clothes that I already have? It's a difficult question. I still do own a lot of my old plastic clothes. I still wear them because just throwing them away and buying new stuff and new clothes is just going to create another waste, another huge carbon footprint. So for me, my answer for that is to still use these clothes until they are usable, until they're wearable. But whenever I will get the urge or the need to buy new clothes, I would go for like organic cotton or linen and organic materials, not plastic ones. There are actually some businesses that are trying to do things more sustainably, more mindfully, more ethically. You should just need to do like some research, some good research about brands and businesses. And I actually post a lot about brands that you can buy from more sustainably. And I would also suggest secondhand. Secondhand is the best option for me. It's sustainable, it's affordable, and you can find so much unique things. I love secondhand. It's just the best. And it's the most sustainable option after not buying anything.
So you recommend brands. I didn't realize that. You do recommend brands. Have those brands reached out to you at all?
Sometimes, yeah, I do recommend brands. I mainly try to talk about secondhand only, but I know that sometimes people need new clothes or it's sometimes hard to switch completely to secondhand for some people. So I try to give different options for different people to cater to different people and different needs. I have some brands reaching out to you, but I would say honestly, I turn down a lot of collaborations because basically I don't need much clothes. I'm very happy with what I have. I turn down a lot of collaboration, not because the business or the brand itself is bad, but just because I don't want to contribute to more and more consumption. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Understood. Tell me, you told your parents you wanted to change the world. So what do your parents think of what you're doing now?
I think mostly they're proud of me. At least I want to hope for that. Yeah, my mom, she doesn't understand many of the things that I'm doing, like my research and stuff, but she's still very supportive of that, of course. And, both of my parents, they are from the Aral Sea. It's where a huge environmental disaster took place in 60s. Currently, we lost almost 90% of the lake. It's actually a lake. And my grandfather, he used to tell me stories like how he went fishing with his father there, how he went with friends to swim in the lake. And the city itself, where both of my parents are from, that was exactly on the shore of the Aral Sea. But when I come here, I cannot see the Aral Sea anywhere around. So you need to drive a couple of hours just to see the Aral Sea. And it's really devastating. It really affected a lot of people around there. I could witness and experience myself what consequences there are from the environmental disaster such as this. Because of course, first of all, the Aral Sea itself, it was a huge source of income for these people. And now that you don't have the lake, you don't have fish, which is your source of food and which is your source of money. And now that we practically lost it, people lost jobs and their main source of food. And another big thing is we think that maybe this environmental disaster, they're not gonna affect you in terms of health or stuff like this, but it does affect you a lot. Everyone in the area, they have a huge rate of cancer, a huge rate of respiratory diseases. Even in my family, all of us, we have allergies. And both my father and my sister, they have asthma. I could witness it myself. I could experience it myself and how bad it affects me and my people and my family. And that was the main reason for me to become more sustainable and to dedicate my life to environmental engineering, environmental science.
Wow. What was the environmental disaster that led to that?
We were under Soviet government at that time, and they wanted to increase cotton production. So they took a lot of water for cotton irrigation. They took too much of it, and we lost 90% of it. It was actually the fourth largest lake in the world. And now we lost 90% of it, almost all of it.
Well, tell us a little bit more about Kazakhstan. I understand that it's a landlocked country. It's the ninth largest country in the world in land area. And I mean, unfortunately, many of us here in the United States don't, at least I don't know a lot about Kazakhstan, except maybe Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen's satirical account, which, but tell us a little bit about it. What kind of a country is it? I mean, it has deserts, it has lakes. Of course, that lake apparently is not much anymore, but tell us a little bit about it.
So it's a very big country, and we have a very diverse nature. Yes, we have mainly deserts, but we do have forests. We do have very beautiful mountains, something very similar to taiga, to Sibir, if you know it. We have very, very cold winters. I live in the capital, which is Astana, and we have winters down to -40, -50 degrees. It's a very beautiful country. We used to be nomads. So horses are very close to our culture. We used to travel all the year long. Like we had our winters in one place and we had summers in another place. We have a very rich culture, rich language. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have one of the richest languages in the world.
It's rich because just the way it sounds, or what do you mean by rich? It's rich the way it sounds, or it has a lot of vocabulary?
Yeah. Our vocabulary is very big. And we speak Kazakh and Russian because we were under Soviet Union, and we are bilingual.
Do you speak Russian too then?
Yeah, I speak Russian and Kazakh. Yeah.
You speak Russian and Kazakh and English, and your English is very good, by the way. And Kazakhstan is I guess it's one of the five stands: Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. So now that you're in Europe, how are you experiencing that? It's very different from your culture.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's like drastically different because we're still very close geographically, but I wouldn't say I had any cultural shocks or something. And also because we know a lot about European culture beforehand because we have a lot of movies, a lot of books. But I really like European culture. It's good. It's still different because we're Asians and here we have Europeans. The way they live life is a bit different. The way they put their life above their work, which is a bit different in Kazakhstan because as Asians, we used to like working and hustle. But in Europe, life itself, it's a bit slower. You can see people just enjoying nature, for example, going hiking, spending a lot of time together, chatting. And I think it's very beautiful. I think this is the thing that I'm gonna try to remember and to do this as well, to incorporate that into my lifestyle as well. And I think it's quite sustainable when you have these other things except for the like consumption or only working. And I really like Europe, but I want to also see other nations and cultures.
Well, what is next for you in terms of not only your research, but your microplastics cause?
For the near future, I'm going to be in Europe. Right now, I'm moving to Germany. We're going to have another project about microplastics because in Spain, I have something similar to what I did in Kazakhstan. But in Germany, I'm going to develop a new method for researching microplastic, for quantifying and like to count microplastics from the river samples. We're going to develop a new method. I don't have much details for you for now, but it's going to be very scientific, but at the same time, interesting project. As for my plans after that, I really want to go and explore Asia, namely eastern part, like Korea, Japan, and China. I want to see how they tackle and how they are focusing on environmental problems, how they are solving these issues, what are they doing, and how people, they see these problems and the consumption and stuff. I just want to see different perspective from different countries and different governments. Because for now, I see Europe, I would say they are quite concerned, especially the people around. At least they know about like the consumption problem, what is like how plastic is bad for the nature, for the people. And I see the interest here in Europe. Now I want to see Asia, Eastern Asia.
Well, awareness is certainly the first step, and then action. And you have a long life ahead of you and a long battle, if you don't mind my saying so.
Yeah, but that's true. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for being with us. Do you have anything else you'd like to say to our audience in terms of microplastics, like check your closets or?
I would say my first advice for everyone is just to start educating yourself. It's the first and the most important step for anyone, just to be aware of the problems around or of the things around you, or just to be interested, because we are a part of nature. We're a part of planet. We should never detach ourselves from that. One of my favorite quotes ever, I don't remember who said that, but she or he said like, from knowing comes caring, and from caring comes change. And I think it's very beautiful and it's very important. And the first part is knowing. And as long as you know about something, as long as you're aware about something, you're going to care about that and you're going to try and change something about that. That's like my final concluding remark for that.
That's your life path, and it's a wonderful way to end this podcast. Thank you, Dana, so much for being with us. I really appreciate it and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. This has been a podcast brought to you by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business founded in 1920. I'm your host, Lisa Champeau. Talk to you next time.